What is up, my beautiful people? Hope you're having a tremendous day. Exile451 here with yet another daily dose of Reddit Happy. It's Thursday, so you know what that means. We're going into AskReddit for some funny stories that I'm sure are going to make you laugh and you can probably relate to. So sit back, relax, and enjoy the video. Okay, so the AskReddit question was, airport employees of Reddit, what is the strangest, funniest, or scariest thing that happened at your airport? I was at the airport one day, waiting for my girlfriend to come pick me up after my flight. She was about 20 minutes away, so I sat down by a window ledge to Reddit, obviously. And like normal, there were various airport employees, security people, passengers, etc. wandering around. After about 5 minutes, I noticed a couple cops with a dog eyeing me up. They go to walk by, and all of a sudden the dog gets really close to me and then sits down. Then the cops give me an intense look and reach under the ledge where I was sitting. All of a sudden they pull out a bag with a few grams of weed in it. This is not my weed, and I start freaking out internally, like any normal person. One of the cops goes, "What's this all about?" Then the other cop bursts out laughing and explains that they are doing canine training, and I happened to sit down right over the exact spot they had previously hidden the bag of weed for the dog to find. The cops were laughing so hard, they had to take a couple-minute break from their training, and after my blood pressure kinda returned to normal, I thought it was pretty funny too. I can only imagine the fear there. Oh my gosh. Oh. Pittsburgh International, 3 a.m. or so, several years ago. Watched an older woman tumble down the up escalator. Every time she flipped over, she yelled, "I'm okay!" like Filbert from Rocko's Modern Life. Flop, "I'm okay!" Flop, "I'm okay!" Flop, "I'm okay!" Rolled in place for maybe a minute before someone shut the thing off. Okay. Takes all kinds, I guess. My mom worked for British Airways for years, dealing with special freight cases for import-export. Much of this freight was offloaded and put in a holding warehouse for customers to collect. It wasn't your typical suitcases and luggage of traveling passengers. One shipment came in from Africa, a large wooden crate that didn't actually weigh very much. Her client came in, opened the crate to check the contents, and immediately became hugely irate to the warehouse staff. He barges into her office holding a frozen venomous snake. She said it looked like a jagged lightning bolt, all zigs and zags. He's screaming at her in the office, gesturing wildly with the dead snake, demanding compensation in the hundreds of thousands of dollars. Turns out, he didn't declare them as animals, probably to get around any customs laws. There were dozens, if not hundreds, of various venomous snakes in the crate. The cargo area of most planes isn't heated, so the poor snakes had literally frozen to death in transit. He couldn't sue and had to answer some interesting questions from the Treasury Department once all was said and done. The sucky thing is, he was importing them to make anti-venom. If he'd only declared them and paid for them to be shipped correctly, he could have made a healthy profit and probably saved some lives. No, I am not going to reference Samuel L. Jackson. Make your own snakes on a plane reference. I was cabin crew doing a turnaround from Dubai, UAE to Muscat, Oman, and back again. We're on the ground in Muscat and hear from ground staff to take extra care of a passenger who was about to board. She was an English lady in her 50s, as you can imagine. Well turned out, but unassuming all the same. But she looked completely shaken when she boarded. So what happened was, she had checked in her luggage and had gone on to security. She placed her trolley bag on the conveyor belt, and she went ahead through the metal detector and was waiting on the other side for her bag. Next thing she knows, she's being detained, placed in handcuffs, and taken to a room for questioning. They take in her bag and start questioning her. Airport police officer, "Did you pack this bag yourself?" Lady, "Yes." Airport police, "So you know what's in the bag?" Lady, "Yes." And goes on describing what's in the bag. The questioning goes on for a while and is quite aggressive. The police officer then opens up the bag, and right on top of everything is this parcel filled with marijuana. She's aghast and protests her innocence, doesn't know anything about it. This poor lady is completely distraught. The gravity of it is hitting her and she's inconsolable. Drugs trafficking anywhere is a big no-no, but Middle Eastern countries, it can end up giving you the death penalty. The officers reviewed the footage of when her bag was scanned, and when she placed her bag on the belt and turned away, a man standing right behind her in seconds undid the zips and slipped it in. She had no idea who this man was, so she was let go and free to continue traveling, but her trolley bag was confiscated as evidence. She wasn't too worried about the bag at that stage. I got her a very big brandy. Lesson to be learned is to not let your bags out of your sight, even for a second. I work at my local airport. I live on a tiny island, and this airport is smaller than our library. And just last summer, we had a hurricane looming down on us. Everyone is getting packed up to evacuate, we're renting cars like crazy to people fleeing, and we're trying to get them out of the storm area. I was out checking on the cars we had, and when I walked back up, there was a man sitting on a bench out front with an apocalyptic-looking storm bearing down on us, wind whipping up everywhere, just soulfully playing the trombone. No idea where he came from or what he was doing, but it was surreal, like something out of a David Lynch film. I worked at a corporate aircraft maintenance place, and we had a situation where this crazy woman somehow got out on the secured ramp area. By the time one of our line service guys saw her, she had the main entry door opened on a global XRS aircraft. When he pulled up, she just looked at him and asked if he could help her get her bags on board. When he told her he couldn't, she told him she was going to fly the plane to China and didn't want to be late. After that occurrence, the security at our airport became insane. My time to shine. Most of the airport work is mundane, but you will get the odd passenger that leaves an impression on you. There was a group of people coming through for a business trip, and their boss had never flown before. One of his employees came in and explained they told him he needed dental records for TSA and wanted us to play along. So the boss comes in and hands me his ID and an x-ray from his dentist to check in for his flight. Trying not to laugh, I show it to my coworker who points at it and says, "Well, TSA might have an issue with that." Dude's face went white as a sheet until his employees busted up laughing. He got super red in the face and eventually just started laughing at himself. Never let it be said that airports are humorless places. As a FedEx employee, you could fly for free on the planes, and back when they used to ship live animals, my old boss flew next to a sedated gorilla. He said the entire flight he spent hoping it wouldn't wake up and go nuts while they were in the air. He also said it did smell pretty bad the entire trip though. And I may or may not be privy to a story about the really early days of FedEx, where an employee took a crate full of monkeys home to show his kids. Yeah, it went about as well as you'd expect. Okay, so he mentioned this and I had to dig through the comments, but eventually he does tell the story. I wish I could tell the story like the guy who told me, but I'll give it a whirl. So there was this guy, a real idiot. His boss was always telling him to straighten up, don't do that, etc. They get a crate full of monkeys in, and at the end of the day, the boss tells this guy, "We're going out for a few drinks. Don't mess with the monkeys." So a few beers in, they get a call from this guy, and the first thing out of the boss's mouth was, "You messed with the monkeys, didn't you?" Turns out, the guy took the crate home to show his kids, and for reasons no one could fathom, he opened it. The monkeys, of course, immediately charged out of the crate and started biting his family, tearing up his house, etc. So everyone leaves the bar to go to this moron's house. Added bonus, the way the crate was set up, you couldn't just toss one monkey in and close it. You had to get them all in the crate and then you could close it. Like it came apart when you opened it or something. I wasn't entirely clear on how the crate worked, but it sounded like an insanely dumb setup. I wonder if the monkeys had been tranquilized when they were put in initially. Anyways, hours later they finally got them all back in the crate. I don't know what ended up happening to the idiot. I doubt he had a job the next day. Oh my. That's the... I mean, who takes home a crate of live monkeys to show their kids and then opens it? Oh my gosh, there are some dumb people out there. Last year, I was working as a contractor in the planning department of a large commercial airport. This airport has a park between the runways that people go to sit and watch planes. I decide to take my 2 young boys out there one evening because they like to watch the planes take off and land. It starts to get dark, and I see a lady stand up and put her arms up and start making a howling sound. At first, I didn't know what she was doing or where the sound was coming from. I hear it again and realize it's her, and she might be a little crazy. This continues for a few minutes, and I decide to leave. Meanwhile, she's standing there, arms up, howling at the planes taking off. A week or so later, I had to ride around the airport with an operations guy, and I tell him about my trip to the park and what happened. He says, "Was there a Lufthansa Airbus leaving while she was doing that?" I tell him, "Yeah, there was." He proceeds to tell me that she's pretty well known around there. According to him, she believes that she died on a Lufthansa flight in a previous life and has been reincarnated into her current body. She thinks her soul is still connected to the flight somehow, and she goes there to pray over the same Lufthansa flight every time it departs. Dang. I work the cargo ramp. We're at the very edge of the main runway, and there's a marshy area about 200 feet from the end of the runway. One day, we saw a pickup roll out on the service road near the marsh and hear several shotgun blasts. A couple minutes later, the airport guys in the truck roll up and ask if anyone wants some free geese. One of our crew took 2 dead geese home and smoked them for us. Delicious. Apparently, the geese were just coming right back to that spot if they were forcibly relocated, so they had to be permanently removed. Well, I guess coming back there meant that their goose was cooked? Huh? Huh? Yeah. I'm not good with that stuff. My father worked as ground crew at a large airport in the 90s. Sometimes he would have to take my brother and I to work with him, and on a very rare occasion, we were in one of the vehicles out on the tarmac. It was an older station wagon. Dad had left to do some work on the tarmac and explicitly told my brother and I not to touch anything in the car. So, of course, my brother, being the antsy pants that he was, at some point decides he wants to roll down the back window in the station wagon. He climbs into the driver's seat and starts pulling levers. If I remember correctly, the gear shifter on this vehicle was on the steering column, and of course, this is what he grabs. The car starts to roll towards a fairly large airplane. I don't remember exactly what happened next, but as my dad remembers it, much of the ground crew began chasing after the car as it rolls closer and closer to this large airplane. Finally, one of the crew manages to jump into the car and stop it just a few feet short of the plane. Not too sure of the distance, but it was pretty close. At the time, it was pretty scary. But looking back on it now, we all find it pretty hilarious. My dad tells us some stories on occasion as well. Another favorite of mine is how when he was working arrivals on the tarmac, if he saw people standing before the plane stopped moving, he'd very sharply give the stop signal to the pilots so they'd push on the brakes a little harder. You punk. But then again, I guess they deserve that. That was r/AskReddit, and if you want more funny or serious AskReddit content, then feel free to click the playlist link in the description below. Now you guys go out there, have a great rest of your day. I will see you all tomorrow. Until then, I'm Exile451. Stay beautiful, people.